Hey everyone, welcome to TYT. Obviously, this isn't our live show, but thanks to Brett Ehrlich prepping this and getting it ready, I thought I would go live today and give you the details of Derek Chauvin's sentencing. Now, keep in mind that he is still facing federal charges. There are federal civil charges, and we'll see how that plays out. But he has not, in fact, been given life in prison. In fact, even though he's been found guilty of second-degree murder, the maximum sentence is 40 years. Prosecutors had asked for 30 years. And today we found through the ruling of Judge Peter Cahill what the final sentence will be. So without further ado, let's take a look at that video.
As sentence for count one, the court commits you to the custody of the commissioner for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis.
So just to unpack some of what Judge Cahill said there, he mentioned the 10 years above the presumptive sentence. Well, the presumptive sentence is about 12 and a half years. So what he was communicating there was that rather than just go to the lowest number of years sentenced for this crime, he's going to attach another 10 years on top of it. Mind you that prosecutors had asked for a 30-year sentence. Of course, Chauvin's defense attorney asked for no prison time, just time on probation, since he feels, this was the defense, that he was the product of a broken system. And so I can imagine that the ruling is not really satisfactory to both sides. I mean, on one hand, you have Derek Chauvin's side that doesn't want to see him serve any time in prison. But, there were calls for Derek Chauvin to get the maximum sentence, which in this case for second-degree murder is 40 years. As you heard the judge say, he was given credit for the 199 days that he's already served in prison. And so there are some other details that I want to share with you. And then I'll talk a little bit about the reasoning that Judge Cahill gave. And that reasoning is something that you could actually read for yourselves. It's a 22-page document outlining why he made this decision. Now, it's not just that he's been sentenced to 22 and a half years. He's not going to serve 22 and a half years behind bars. In fact, 15 of those years will be behind bars, and he'll have another 10 and a half years on probation. And so that's basically how it's going to break down. We don't know what the outcome of this federal civil case is going to be, but he does have about 90 days to appeal this, and it appears that he's considering that. Now, with that said, Judge Cahill, again, did outline his reasoning for this. I would suspect that some of the testimony coming from people like George Floyd's daughter, who's 3 years old, might have played a role as well. Let's take a quick look at that video. But I do want to warn you, Brett warned me that this video is going to make me cry. I haven't seen it yet, but consider yourselves warned. Let's watch.
Well, I ask about him all the time. And that's kind of it.
Do you wish that he was still here with us?
Yeah, but he is.
Through his spirit?
Yes.
Yes. And when you see your daddy again one day, what do you want to do when you see him?
We used to have dinner meals every single night before we went to bed. My daddy always used to help me brush my teeth.
Yeah. If you could say anything to your daddy right now, what would it be?
It would be, I miss you and I love you.
So I apologize. She's not 3. She's 7 years old. That was Gianna, George Floyd's daughter. There was also some testimony coming from his brother Terrence. Let's go to that.
I wanted to know from the man himself, why? What were you thinking? What was going through your head when you had your knee on my brother's neck? Why when you knew that he posed no threat anymore, he was handcuffed, why you didn't at least get up? On behalf of me and my family, we seek the maximum penalty. We don't want to see no more slaps on the wrists. We've been through that already. In my community, in my culture, we've been through that already. Smacked on the wrist. No. Because if it was us, if the roles was reversed, there wouldn't be no case. It would have been open and shut. We'd have been under the jail for murdering somebody. So we asked for that same penalty for Derek Chauvin. Thank you.
So again, they asked for the maximum possible sentence. That sentence would have been 40 years. And of course, Judge Cahill did not go in that direction. Just going back to the presumptive sentence, the presumptive sentence again is 12 and a half years. And I want to give a little bit of the reasoning from Judge Cahill in regard to why he didn't go with the presumptive sentencing and went with something a little higher. Since Cahill found 4 aggravating factors in Floyd's murder, he could depart from those guidelines and offer, or not offer, but hand down a longer prison sentence. So again, 22 and a half years, 15 of those years will be behind bars with 199 days served, credit for the time he's already spent behind bars. And then the rest of that sentence will be served under probation. So there's that. I apologize. I keep saying probation. I mean parole. It'll be under parole. So that's an important distinction. I do apologize. I don't want anyone to get any misinformation from this. Parole, not probation. So there's that. I want to go to the final video now, which features Derek Chauvin's short and somewhat cryptic statement, and then we'll talk about what's likely to happen in the future.
Chauvin, this is your opportunity if you wish to give any input to the court. And so I turn it over to you and your attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. But very briefly, though, I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest. And I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you.
It's likely that he's going to try to appeal the sentence, and he has 90 days to make that decision. I want to now turn over to the audience. I'm looking at the chat on YouTube, and I want to get some of your thoughts on this. So if you want to send us a super chat, now's a great time to do it. I want to read what your comments are and what your thoughts are. Just based on what I've read so far, it seems as if most of the audience, at least those commenting, don't find this to be a good sentence, that it's far too short. I'm actually surprised that someone convicted of second-degree murder can only serve a maximum of 40 years in the state of Minnesota. So again, the maximum sentence for second-degree murder is 40 years. The prosecutors didn't even ask for the maximum, which is also pretty surprising, right? Why is it that they asked for 30 years instead of the maximum 40 years? And Judge Cahill ended up deciding rather than go with 30 years, which is what the prosecutors asked for, they're going to go ahead and move forward with 22 and a half years. So I'm not entirely sure what his age is, but one person in the comments section is saying that he'll get out at 67 with a full term. Also, I'm kind of uncertain how much time he's actually going to serve behind bars. The sentencing so far, as it's being reported, indicates that he'll be behind bars for at least 15 years. But are there any, potential loopholes? Maybe his sentence gets shortened sometime in the future as a result of good behavior. I don't know. Let's see. So if you guys have any thoughts about this, please write in and share your thoughts and messages. It's kind of hard for me to talk about it solo because this is a good conversation to have with a panel. And luckily, TYT's main show will be covering this today as its first story. And by the way, okay, so I'm getting word from Brett that anything over 30 years runs the risk of getting overturned. So that's probably the reason why the prosecution went with 30 years as opposed to asking for the maximum of 40 years for this second-degree murder conviction. Let's see. So Nicole Smith writes in and says that she feels that Derek Chauvin deserves the maximum for each count served consecutively. And I'm getting a lot of similar feedback in our super chats or comment section. Let me see if I can read some more. Dimitri writes in and says, it should have been 40 years, no parole, but I don't believe he'll survive the 15 with good behavior. He'll get it. Or he'll serve, I'm guessing you mean. You don't think that he'll serve the 15 years with good behavior. He'll probably get out early, which is, I'm seeing a lot of that feedback on Twitter as well. Obviously, we don't know, but it is kind of shocking that he didn't get the 30 years. When you consider the abundance of evidence in that case, right? When you consider the video that we've all seen, the testimony that was given, honestly, the awful defense, the defense attorney from what we covered on the show didn't really seem to have a solid defense for his client. It seemed like the only thing that he was relying on was this notion that George Floyd had drugs in his system and therefore he died as a result of the drugs. But there were medical professionals brought in by the prosecution that indicated that had it not been for Derek Chauvin leaning on George Floyd's neck for as long as he did and as brutally as he did, he wouldn't have died. And so, you can go back and watch some of our video coverage on that. I don't want to put words in the mouths of the medical professionals who were brought in. They were definitely far more articulate in expressing what they meant in regard to that testimony. But yeah, definitely check that out. It was just it was such a compelling case against Floyd. And based on what I've read from Cahill, it seems pretty clear that the judge, felt that Derek Chauvin deserved a harsh sentence, right? But I don't know why he didn't just go for the 30 years that the prosecutors had asked for. All right, so Mom Fur Baby says, I sent in the first super chat and you passed right over my post. I didn't see it. I'm going to see if I can find it. But I promise you I did not intentionally pass over your post. We have something from Non-Human Humanist who says that Derek Chauvin is a danger to the public and should be considered. When we come out, or when he comes out, will he be able to harm anyone else? I hope not. So that's he's definitely a danger to society. And the lack of remorse following what he did, just how incredibly brutal that was, and how he just showed no remorse at all. Like, I think, to me, that would factor into deciding what the sentence should be, right? Is this someone who at least understands his wrongdoing, or is this someone who thinks that he's completely innocent and did nothing wrong? In fact, the defense feels that he should serve no time in prison because he's allegedly a product of a broken system. And there might be some truth behind that, but if the system is broken and that's a decent defense for someone who goes around like kneeling on someone's neck until they die, I just don't think that should be used in a court of law as a valid defense. All right. Boyd writes in and says, civilization rests on principles. We treat our criminals better than they treated their victims. that we do not stop at their that we do not stoop to their levels. One thing I wanted to bring up quickly is there is a little bit of an inconsistency in what we're trying to do in the country in terms of the criminal justice system, how we need to reform it. As we know, the system is brutally punitive. We see people serving insanely long sentences, and that's something that we want to reform. And what we see from the reaction to this Derek Chauvin sentencing is anger. And I feel it, right? Like the justified anger that someone can do that to another human being and not spend the rest of their lives behind bars, right? In this case, just repeating it for anyone who's joining in right now, Derek Chauvin gets sentenced to 22 and a half years with 15 behind bars and the other 10 and a half under parole. And it's hard to separate what you know is right from honestly, your emotional reaction to things. Because you see that and you want to see that man behind bars for the rest of his life. But we have to also try to resist that urge, because when we do that, I think that it hinders the criminal justice reform that we need in this country. And even the worst people who commit the worst offenses in some of the Scandinavian countries that we look at and study don't serve insanely long sentences. And the conditions that they're imprisoned under are certainly more in the effort to rehabilitate as opposed to just be punitive, right? I'm not saying that you're going to Disneyland. I mean, certainly it seems like Disneyland compared to what prisons are like here in the United States, but prisons in the United States don't rehabilitate people. So going back to the previous super chat regarding whether Derek Chauvin is going to be a threat to society when he's released, yeah, I mean, in order for him not to be, he would need to go into an environment that has at least some effort to rehabilitate him, right? And we don't see that in our prisons. So like from bottom to top, there's so much that needs to be reformed. But I think that the very human desire to see someone suffer after they've harmed someone else, the very real desire to see Derek Chauvin suffer because of that disgusting cruelty is so understandable. It's so understandable, but you got to keep a clear head and also think about the bigger picture, right? I don't know how I feel about 22 and a half years. It's kind of hard for me to really process it at this very moment, because I just feel like this tug and pull in terms of like my political beliefs versus my emotional and my human feelings about this, right? So I'm just being honest with you guys about where I'm at on this issue. But there's going to be a great conversation about this on the first hour of the main show today. I just wanted to jump in and talk to you guys about it as soon as I found out about the story. Thank you to Brett Ehrlich for making this possible. He's the one who grabbed those videos so I could share them with you. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. So definitely watch the show live today at 6 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And you'll have a great panel to discuss everything and possible updates as they produce these stories. So we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys. Hey, so it's Anna, and I'm back. I wanted to make sure to read some of the super chats that came in because I did, in fact, miss some of them. So let's start with the super chat at the top. Remade Posthuman says, there were already guys with guns walking around and a semi-riot last night. Maybe it won't tonight because of this. 4 little kids got shot in gang crossfire this summer. Some of us actually live here. So I'm guessing that that's a reference to possible riots in response to the sentencing. Just everyone, please stay safe out there. And I really hope that there aren't any riots. Hallie Schultz says the defense may have a point, but many crimes are violent and are committed as a result of a broken system. He deserves every second served. Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, that defense was so ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Joni, the Silverback Dragon, says black man kills white office, life without parole, white officer. Kills black man with good behavior, 16 and a half years. It's not fair. We see it all the time. I mean, look, I think one of the byproducts of the 1990s crime, tough on crime culture was like in California, the 3 strikes law, where you can commit 3 relatively minor crimes, but since it's 3 crimes, then you get like the maximum sentence. Those kinds of policies need to be reversed. So when we're talking about criminal justice reform, we mean reversing all of that stuff, right? And allowing for sentencing that actually makes sense. That's why you see this disparity between some sentences that were given after like a nonviolent offense versus the first sentence for someone who's committed a crime but has a clean record. Like it's insane. So Boyd I think I read that earlier. Civilization, rest of the principles. Yeah, I did read that earlier. Mom for Babies Maltese. I read that earlier. Danger Dave says, I know the charges against him weren't admitted in this particular trial, but won't he also be prosecuted separately for what he did to the 14-year-old from 2017? If so, at least it will be more time. I'm not sure about that. So I'd love to be able to give you an answer, but I don't have one. And we'll definitely see if that situation with the 14-year-old has any impact on sentencing. Mom for Babies, to go back to your earlier super chat, he will not make it long enough in prison. I knew the judge was going to give him the nice little black man killer break. The judge should be ashamed of himself. That is so messed up. He did choose a sentence that seems to upset everyone. So maybe he thought, well, maybe in an effort to avoid looking biased in any way, I'm going to cut the difference. I don't know. But he did, look, I didn't have time to read it before going live, and I'm going to read it because I am curious what his reasoning is. If he released a 22-page document outlining his reasoning for that statement or that sentence, I think it's worth reading. All right, Remade Posthuman. I already read that. Okay, I think that's it. I think yeah, okay. So thank you so much for writing in, everyone. And like I said earlier, definitely check out the live show. They're going to have a power panel today since it's Friday, and I'm hoping that they have even more details as this story develops. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.